Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you.
Discover a new path to wellness at Arizona Metabolic Health. Dr. Brian Lenskis offers advanced medicine and personalized care, treating the root causes of your health concerns, not just the symptoms. Whether you're seeking direct primary care, effective diabetes management, or medical weight loss, with a holistic approach, our team is here to guide you every step of the way. Visit ArizonaMetabolicHealth.com today to learn more about our innovative health solutions.
When I stepped on that scale and saw the number 278 pounds, it was like a punch in the gut. I was just sick and tired of being fat, sick, and tired. I knew that I had to make a change. I started to read about the low-carb diet and I decided to give it a try. The weight started to fall off me. I added Health Code on a daily basis to my diet. It's a high protein, healthy fat meal replacement that is simply delicious, and it's easy to make. And after I have one, I don't get hungry for hours. My strength has improved. My VO2 max has gone up 7 points. I have higher energy levels throughout the day. I want to be healthy enough to throw my grandchildren up in the air and go on hikes up a mountain with them. And I totally believe that Health Code can be an important part of that. I believe Health Code is the best meal replacement shake ever formulated. I wouldn't be taking it otherwise.
Try Health Code risk-free.
Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I got someone from the dark side here, Tro's team from Toward Health. But she's a light. She's actually the brains behind the whole operation, in my opinion. I'm not so sure. But no, they have a great collaboration. Dr. Laura Buchanan's here to talk about some of the amazing data they have. Tro's doing some amazing work, and I've been like in awe of all the publishing that he's doing right now, with your team, I should say. So give us all the lowdown on your latest studies and some of the new stuff that you have coming out.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, first of all, tell people about you so they know how you got involved with Tro, and how you went into this metabolic health medicine.
For sure. A little background. So I grew up loving sports, very passionate about that. And then I'll give a little kind of truncated version. But basically I saw in my own family how lifestyle had a huge impact on aging, and saw my mom's mom, my granny, live into her upper 90s and was thriving and playing tennis at 88 years old, and just fed herself real food and exercised daily. It's just a simple, healthy lifestyle. And so then I saw other people I really loved and cared about who were, eating fast food and dealing with complications from diabetes and just a lot of, standard kind of medical complications that you see. It was very hard to watch. And so going into medical school, we had almost no nutrition education, and so this was an area I was interested in. I did a lot of my own research and learning, found Nina Teicholz, Jason Fung, Low Carb MD podcast during medical school, and then was like, clearly low carb, after all the research I had done, is the way to go. After avoiding red meat for almost a decade, I now eat red meat daily, and it's been an awesome journey, and never, have not looked back. From day one of residency, once I started taking care of patients, I was trying to help people go low carb, reverse their chronic metabolic diseases, improve mental health, all through lifestyle.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how much we can do, and it's kind of a weird, isn't it a weird area of medicine? To me, it is because some of the stuff I never can. When Tro and I first started the Low Carb MD podcast, 8 years ago now, we were talking about diabetes reversal, right, and
Yeah.
helping with obesity and food cravings, things like that. But then we started seeing the mood stuff, and then we have Metabolic Mind come along, and now I was just at a meeting for Alzheimer's support group, and I just happened to sit next to this couple and we got into a conversation, and they were blown away by some of the data that's out there that, the person giving the presentation was saying nothing we could really do. There's a couple of drugs, they slow progression, but it might slow it by 2 or 3 months and then you're ending up in a nursing home anyways. I'm like, that's pretty depressing, right?
Yeah.
So all these things we can do, to help people along the way and prevent these things, or at least delay it by years and years and have a good quality of life like your grandma did.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And just like you said, where it's all these other things start popping up that you didn't think necessarily would get better, but then people are like, oh, by the way, I had a patient, I've been dealing with tinnitus or tinnitus for decades, and it's much, much better. And same thing, acne significantly better, eosinophilic esophagitis resolved, being on 2 different medications for decades, and then reversed. So just so many different medical conditions, gambling. I think, I've heard you and Tro talk about too. We've,
Gambling, pornography. I mean, it's ridiculous. Video games, just
yeah,
not engaging with your family anymore. Interpersonal conflicts, all these kind of things. See, people say, I don't get bugged by stuff like I used to. It's amazing.
yeah, yeah. It's so exciting, and I just looked at the preliminary data, so this is really something that we're going to look a lot more in depth and probably hopefully publish on in the next year or so. But we've been collecting data on people's quality of lives from a physical health, mental health perspective. How many days of the month do you feel energized and very healthy versus not? And people go from feeling very healthy, energized, maybe 5 or 7 days of the month to 18 days of the month. It's like huge improvements. Same thing with physical and mental health. We're seeing large drops going from 30% of the time dealing with serious physical or mental health issues to less than 10% of the time. And so just kind of some exciting preliminary stuff there, but it tracks with everything else that we're seeing from the metabolic mind, metabolic psychiatry world that Chris Palmer, Georgia E.
Mhm.
have been talking about, seeing not only, schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, all of these symptoms improve. And so, yeah, it's just a really exciting time to be in this space.
It's amazing. And these correlations we see, diabetics are 60% more likely to get dementia and Parkinson's and all these other diseases that we're seeing. You think, gosh, are they all interrelated? All these things we're seeing, they have a common source with mitochondrial dysfunction and insulin resistance. It's so exciting to say, what can we intervene on to help reverse that or prevent the damage in the first place?
Yeah, and with Alzheimer's, you think about decades prior to symptoms developing, you can see glucose hypometabolism, meaning the brain not using glucose or sugar very well on MRI scanners. And if you help someone go low carb, go keto, you reverse that pathology, and then the brain can utilize ketones without issues, even if the brain can't use sugar as well anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I think it's something that's bothered me for a long time, knowing the science and knowing what we're seeing is seeing the products that they're giving seniors and babies, and you
Yeah,
see what they're giving them as what they call nutrition. You go, okay, let's look at the ingredient list. It's hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup. The worst things that if you want your brain to shut down, that's what you give someone.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things I know we're going to spend a lot more time talking about, but it just made me think of, because what you're talking about, what we're giving babies, what we're giving seniors in nursing home, is what we're giving people in the hospital. So we're going to talk about food addiction and what a huge issue that is. It's, depending on the study you look at, over 20% of people suffer with food addiction. And when I was working in the hospital, there is a patient of mine that he had already had one amputation from his uncontrolled diabetes, came in requiring a second amputation. So he was losing both of his legs from diabetes. And after his surgery, the next day he was eating pancakes. And this was, one, I think this is horrible from the hospital, the fact that we were providing him with that food. But two, he had been educated that his diabetes and pancakes were going to elevate his sugars, were causing the amputations. And to me, that is such a, no one can deny food addiction. If you see someone who is going through that and then continuing to eat the substance that is causing those complications.
That's by definition addiction. When you know it's causing you harm and you still do it, right? You know alcohol's messing up your marriage and it's messing up your work, and you keep doing that. By definition, that's addiction. So carbs are no different, sugar is no different, and so there. And obviously, anyone listening, there's a spectrum, right? Rob
Yeah.
Sivas is very hardcore. That a lot of people are super addicted to carbohydrates, processed foods, and other people are saying, well, it's kind of you fall into these habits. I just get donuts when I go to work, and I just kind of, a lot of people just fall into that, and you take it away, and they go, okay, I'll just do something else. But other people, like, it's an emotional, like I'll Dr. Unwin first talked about this, but it's amazing if you say, yeah, sourdough bread's going to spike your sugars and stuff, and then like people are like depressed going, oh my gosh, is life worth living without that? You try to take pasta from my Italian patients, forget it. It's really, really a challenge.
It can be so hard. And so I think this is where, for some people, it just like any other addiction, if someone is really struggling with alcohol use, like you mentioned, then very often you have to remove alcohol from their lives. They need to just abstain. And for some people, and I think, like you said, Dr. Rob Sivas, he talks about abstaining can be so key. Whereas other people, actually, I think a harm reduction strategy, meaning using some replacement foods, can actually be really effective. You're going to a party with a bunch of desserts, and then you bring a keto cheesecake and have some of the keto cheesecake, and that works.
Yeah, I would love to pick your brain on this a little bit because I know Tro and I have discussed it. It's really I have people go carnivore and they go, I don't even think about sugar anymore. It's not even part of my mindset. And they do very well that way. And then there's this thought in addiction medicine and all. It's like if you deprive someone of stuff, they're going to go crazy and binge on all those things. But the other side of the coin is, okay, if we use an example of alcohol since most people can relate.
Yeah.
So if I've abstained from alcohol for the last 2 years and I go to a party and they go, oh, just have one drink, right? You have that
Yeah.
one drink and you're that person who can't. Some people can have one drink and say, okay, that's it, I'm done. I won't drink again for a year. But other people, they have one drink and they end up in the gutter somewhere.
Yeah, and that's where I think it is just so person dependent, and you need to talk to the person and help them, dig deep and say, who am I? Am I the person who can have that one glass and it's fine? Or am I the person, I know that one glass leads to 4 glasses, leads to, weeks. Like you said, I could end up in the gutter because of it. And, I've worked with across the full spectrum. I saw someone last week who I think truly abstaining from all replacements is going to be key. But then again, other people, I think using those keto replacement products, especially earlier on, as you're trying to avoid the temptations at the workplace and the fast food, and then having those replacement options, even if maybe they're not the healthiest thing, they're a better option, like a Diet Coke over a regular soda or a
Yeah,
stevia Coke.
exactly. Well, and those things, you go, okay, am I better off doing the stevia than the other one? And do the Coke Zeros of the world, are they causing an insulin response and making you more hungry and you're not losing weight doing that? So there's a lot of things that we all struggle with. And you go, okay, like if you have a choice between a regular Coke and one of those, you go for that, right? And so the problem becomes some people will say, okay, I'm keto now, so I'm having keto cheesecake for breakfast and keto uh ice cream at night and keto this, and you go, oh my gosh, like that is not gonna, you're not gonna benefit as much as if you're
Right.
saying, let me eat real food, because it's not. And this is an important topic, that we skip over a lot, but you're going to see a lot of keto ice creams, a lot of keto different things, but they use a lot of emulsifiers, a lot of things that can really wreck the gut microbiome, right? And cause all kinds of other health problems that we don't even think about, on our journeys. Like, gosh, we're going to be way better off eating real food.
Yeah, 100%. That is, I think, and again, in the beginning, not always emphasizing that if someone is like brand new to low carb, just helping them stay low carb, get their body used to burning fat and burning ketones for energy. But then the end goal, and for everyone in my mind, is eating whole, real food. Like you said, you're avoiding the emulsifiers, you're avoiding the different gums that are added to foods for the most part. And, I think when you're striving for optimal health, whole, real food, you're not going to beat it.
Yeah, and that's the other complaint people always have. They go, "Oh, I tried this keto ice cream; it was terrible. It was so hard, and it wasn't." Well, because if they're not using the emulsifiers and all these things, right, you're not going to buy it then because you're not going. It's not creamy and is what you expect. So there's so many factors involved. But if you stay away from ice cream as much as possible, and then there's other products that you can use that, So that's one thing that getting back to the senior issue. I say, okay, mom craves sugar, so they give her sugar with everything. And it's like, okay, how about if we give her some alternative? Like this podcast sponsored by Health Code, and I'm so happy when I could say, you know what, let's give mom some Health Code. We can make bars out of it. We can do this out of it, and you're getting good nutrition for her, right? Add an avocado or eggs in there, things like that. If you're trying to boost up the calories, and I see people thrive doing things like that, and so there's other options you can make, pudding out of eggs, right? Yeah, as a base, and so you're getting a good protein source. Because I think one of the bigger things we're seeing is the more of those keto treats that we're eating, we're not getting enough protein. A lot of our seniors need protein and they're not getting it. So figuring out, can we do stuff with protein powders or different things to get that protein load for them to maintain their muscle mass?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think Greek yogurt with a little bit of protein powder,
Yeah.
if you like chocolate, I mean, that's the dessert. That's the ice cream replacement right there that I'd say is a wonderful option for a lot of people and doesn't end up triggering spirals of other unhealthier food choices or cravings for more sweets.
Yeah, that's huge. Things like that. I'm gravitating more towards that Greek yogurt, throw a little protein. I've never done protein powders, but I've just been, I met with a couple of trainers who, just on podcasts and stuff, and they're like, you got to get protein. Like, so if you're doing a long-term intermittent fasting, one meal a day, it's hard to get that protein in. So that's the down, even though you can do it, doesn't mean it's necessarily a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So,
Um,
so let's talk about your paper. What are you guys finding with the food addiction thing? Do you have a title for it yet? I know it's
yeah,
not out yet, but we get a little preview.
yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about the data. So we were collecting. It's called the Modified Yale Food Addiction Scale, as well as the Yale Food Addiction Scale is the original one, and then also binge eating scale, binge eating symptoms. And so, potentially toward a metabolic health intervention that improves food addiction and binge eating symptoms. And the what we found is that just through implementing a low carb lifestyle, we recommend typically 30 grams of total carbohydrate or less per day, not worrying about your non starchy vegetables or your leafy greens, and then really individualize it from there to the person in front of you. But we found significant improvements in food addiction symptoms, binge eating symptoms, and this is in line with what Jen Unwin, who is actually going to be talking at our food relationship fix that we're doing at the end of April. Uh, this is what she found in her paper as well, using a whole food, low carbohydrate diet, significant improvements in food addiction symptoms. And that was actually a study done across the United States, Sweden, UK. So 3 different populations, and you're seeing the same thing: low carb, improving food addiction.
Yeah, and that's an amazing, because I'll tell you, this was, there's so much stuff we learn from people, and I had a patient who had a food addiction, binge eating disorder, and she was eating a ton of sugar, and she had fatty liver disease and some other health problems. And she asked me, "How can I fix these health problems?" I was like, "Hey, you got to cut out the high fructose corn syrup and the sugar. That's the only way out of this." And her nutritionist called me and like read me for like 15 minutes. They didn't even talk to me. Who are you? Like, why are you doing it this way? And she said, if you deprive them of sugar, they're going to binge on sugar even worse. I was like, I don't think so in my clinical labs. Like, that's like saying, tell an alcoholic not to binge on alcohol. So you give them a drink every day. Doesn't make sense. What you're
Yeah.
doing isn't making sense. And she's getting metabolically sicker. And that what I'm finding is when people get metabolically healthy, they don't need that sugar. And the other thing is when your brain is less inflamed and you're less stressed, people don't need that drink or sugar. Or this is the point we were making because it sounds so
Right.
crazy. Even when Tro brought up the pornography issue, I was like, what does that do? Then I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, you're stressed out and that's your stress relief, right? And it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be whatever it is, just going in your room and listening to music and not engaging with your family. I mean, all these things are stress. So if we get the underlying stress better, and everyone says this, I'm a stress eater. I get stressed and I need to eat something.
Yep.
Once
Yep.
you're not stressed anymore, then what? Do you need that? You know? Some people just putting a puzzle together after dinner, like distracts them from snacking after dinner, all these kind of things that, and why do we need that? Why is that our comfort? Because we're hitting these little dopamine receptors in our brain.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of it too, is when you're talking to that person in front of you, when they get home from work, I've had several people say, I find myself in the kitchen with things in my mouth before I've even thought about it. Like I'm eating mindlessly. And so trying to help them basically create a new routine, a new habit when they get home, this is the thing that happens to kind of break that cycle. Because the body, like you said, that stress is high. You're coming home from work. It's been a tough day. So you're going to get a little bit of a dopamine rush from something in the pantry.
Yeah. And how can we do it different, right? How can we do it different? Like,
Yeah.
what are you finding in your study that is a substitute? If they have a high protein, like if they had a protein powder with Greek yogurt, something like that, would that
Yeah.
be a better alternative than eating chips and crackers?
100%. Oftentimes it's that. Sometimes it's, get home and then go for just a 2 to 5 minute walk outside. Do something else, get some sunlight, do something that is going to provide a form of relaxation for the body. You mentioned puzzles, some people coloring, actually going back to that again, kind of keep doing something with the hands, keeping them busy. Some drinking a tea or a decaf coffee while you're cooking dinner, so you're not inclined to snack a lot and just, again, even sometimes nuts, we find that can be a food that people, while they're cooking, will eat a ton of nuts. And so it's, again, it's person dependent what the trigger or what the food is, but that's what I think it, I was thinking about this, I was going back to the alcohol thing, but if 20% of adults have food addiction or symptoms of food addiction, and it's higher depending on which subpopulations you look at, we should screen, and we do screen all of our patients for food addiction symptoms. And imagine if someone had a serious addiction to alcohol and they were given the same advice to someone who just drinks a few glasses of wine per week. This is like giving the same dietary advice to someone who has a super high food addiction score compared to someone who has no food addiction symptoms.
Exactly. And differentiating these two is the key. And the only one who can really do that a lot of times is the patient. Like they'll go, look, once I have one cookie, I can't stop. Other people have half a cookie and I'm done, right?
Yeah.
The metabolically healthier people can get away, like they can do that. And they're like, that's not their like all be all end all. They go, yeah, the cookies they'll have one. If not, I'm not. It's not a big deal. Other
Yeah.
people, I was just talking to someone, he goes, man, it was crazy at like 9 at night. We wanted something and we just went out, drove out and got it. We were all in our pajamas pretty much and got dressed and went out and got our ice cream or whatever it is, and how addicting that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and now too with food delivery services, I've talked with people who are getting crumbled cookies and, XYZ midnight cookies that are being delivered to their house at midnight or 1 a.m.
Yeah, you're not even out walking. You're not doing anything to at least walking to your car is going to be better than having it all delivered. And that's this convenience lifestyle is really taking a toll for sure.
Yeah. And that reminded me, just thinking about the, other data, that clinical things we've seen is night eating syndrome, which there's really not a lot out there about night eating syndrome. But as I've talked to more people who are dealing with food addiction, oftentimes they do have some forms of night eating syndrome. And so what that is oftentimes people eating a large amount of their calories at night and often waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to go back to sleep unless you go eat something. And usually it's very sugary, salty things that then allow the person to go back to sleep. And that's actually something we see getting better and going away in some patients.
Yeah, and I think you're balancing out those sugars because when you get those spikes and then you get the low sugars and you're hungry and you wake up in the middle of the night and all those things. Alcohol does that, is famous for that too, interrupting the sleep cycle. And plus, the other thing with alcohol when we're struggling with food addiction is that once you have a couple of drinks, you lower that inhibition. You go, okay, just forget it. And I see it all the time. All of a sudden, the CGM makes these funny changes and boom, straight up. I'm like, you went to happy hour, didn't you? Yeah, shoot. We were there with our friends and go, we'll start again on Monday. And you can see the next morning the sugars are low and they feel terrible and all that kind of stuff too. And that's the other remarkable thing is that Tro is a pioneer of with toward health and that I can monitor is having a continuous glucose monitor because we can see it. Just imagine if Alcoholics Anonymous had an alcohol monitor that all these guys had. You have one drink and someone calls you and goes, "Hey, it looks like your alcohol level. How are you doing?" And so we've had times we'll call the patient, goes, my brother-in-law's in town and they made some extra food. It's one of those things. They're not totally off the rails. It's just kind of a temporary thing. But being able to catch that is really critical.
Yeah, yeah. I think the CGM has got to be one of the most empowering tools that has been invented. I mean, for the individual person, and then, like you said, a tool for also us to help people and reach out because it can be really hard to reach out when you're struggling. You feel guilty or ashamed by the fact that maybe you're eating off plan or you had those sweets.
Yeah, and I'll tell anyone listening, the one thing that we both all realize toward health and Arizona Metabolic Health, San Diego Metabolic Health, we have support groups every at least every other week, and then connecting people during the week that they can go exercise together. But the accountability, what I see is people who show up every week are crushing it. The ones
Yeah,
who aren't showing up are struggling. And if they were just there, they would have the encouragement. And so many people come in and go, I didn't want to come today because I've been blowing it this week. I was stressed out and got a fight with my husband. And everyone says, oh, I was there 2 weeks ago. You know what I did? Here's what I did. And there's no judgment. Everyone helps each other because we're all in the battle together.
yeah,
So having that, even when you don't want to go, they always say that the day you don't want to go to church is the day you need to go because you're going to
yeah.
hear a message that's going to help you get back on track or get you figured out. So like this avoidance thing when we're off track we get isolated. Like that's how we get isolated and get killed. You want to stay in the pack. That's your pack, so you can protect each other and uplift each other. That's a huge part of this.
It is. I mean, the current food environment is so hard to navigate. We are just being constantly bombarded with ultra processed, high sugary, highly palatable foods that hit the dopamine brain's reward centers. And so like you said, the support groups I think are critical. We now have 3 different days during the week where we call it Coach's Corner, where if people are on the app or, patients of ours, they can just go in there for 30 minutes, talk to one of the health coaches and talk to other people in the community, like you said, talk about their struggles, their victories, and support people that are all going through the same thing.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the community. So many people say, they'll down the road, they'll say, 3 weeks ago you said this and that impacted me. I started exercising or I started just doing my rebounder. I started doing something after dinner and it's a huge impact. And the person who gave that, the recommendation feels great about it because they helped someone else. And it just spreads that way. And then that person is going to help the next person say, yeah, when I was struggling, this is what I learned, and I think that's what's amazing about our journey is that we can really help each other. And the community is so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to something yesterday and was talking about blue zones and diet. And every time blue zones is brought up, I think the true thing that all blue zones have in common is a great community system, a great support system. The dietary stuff can be all over the place with blue zones, but the
Yeah. And
support, yeah.
that's one thing I've always argued too. The Mediterranean diet is not just the Mediterranean diet. They're in the Mediterranean and they're relaxing and they help their neighbors and they get along. We all fight with each other and we're worried about paying our taxes and running around stressed out all the time. So it's a Mediterranean lifestyle, you know.
Mhm.
So if you're people who are just chill and relax and they're not in a hurry all the time and this is one thing and there's actually and you probably heard me talk about it before, but Roseto, Pennsylvania, where all the Italian immigrants were, their cholesterol was no different. Their smoking rate, their exercise rate, everything. What they had was community, and their mortality rate was half anywhere else for seniors in the United States. But they also had grandma living with the parent, living with the kids, so the grandparents would take care of the kids. They're interacting, they're teaching them stuff. They're not just sitting in a room watching TV all day. So these interactions, social connections, these things are so critical, and it's been overlooked by far in medicine. Like that's one thing when I was in the standard practice model, I thought, gosh, if I could just get my patients together, but then you have HIPAA, you have all these things. But now we do like walk with the doc. We go for a walk and, we all just, they ask me questions. I'm walking, we're exercising together and we can talk about low carb or keto or stress or whatever, sleep, sauna. I don't care. We could talk about
Yeah.
whatever. And we're doing it together. And so you're building those communities and connections and all that. And,
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about your other study with um, employee health stuff, because the big thing we hear all the time, and it's so funny to me, is that they'll say, yeah, low carb is non-sustainable, right?
Yeah. Yep. It is. That is probably the most common thing whenever I bring up low carb to any of the other docs that I work with, or, oh, but it's not sustainable. I'm like, well, I've been low carb now for almost 7 years. You look at Brian.
And people are doing it 25 years ago. It's not sustainable, and they're super
Yeah.
healthy, and they're 80 years old now, right?
Right. Yeah. And so we recently published in February in Frontiers in Nutrition our 1 year data on an employee wellness program. And we were looking at primarily two things: weight loss and then cost savings to the company through medication deprescription. And so at 1 year, people had lost 15.5% of their total body weight, which is about 43 pounds on average. And this was while stopping 96 medications, which I think is even my favorite part.
That's the hugest part, right? That is unbelievable, right? You stop
Yeah.
the medication, you have more success. And other markers are going to improve, like blood pressure, anxiety levels, stress, all these other factors. And, for employers don't understand, the other thing is missed days of work because of diabetes infections, complications, dialysis, whatever. And that's another one. I'd love to hear all your take on what you found, but also when people are steady and they're not having their sugars go up and down, they're less likely to have interpersonal conflict and stress and arguments at work. And you want to have a healthy, good workplace, right?
Yeah. And that's where I think we haven't published this data yet, but we are collecting and looking at it, and the preliminary data does look really promising, is in that health quality of life questionnaire, where you are looking at physical health, mental health, how many days in the past 30 have you felt sad, blue, depressed, worried, tense, anxious? Has your physical or mental health made it hard for you to do your usual daily activities? And actually, for a lot of people, their mental health and physical health has seriously impacted their ability to do usual daily activities. And this is with an average population who are in their 50s. And so think about yourself: if you're in your 50s and you're not able to do your usual daily activities because of poor physical or mental health, I mean, this is such an area of opportunity to help people. And that's exactly what we're finding with low carb.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that's the common complaint. One of the most frustrating complaints I've had over my years of 25 years is fatigue. I'm just tired all the time of fatigue. I have no energy. I never have energy. There's nothing. I can't exercise. I don't have energy. And it's such a hard thing because you look at their diet and you go, oh gosh, that's why you don't have energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in part because our society has just not emphasized it, but I've had several people tell me that they didn't know how good they could feel. Like, they just thought that was how they were gonna go through life. You went through life feeling like you were dragging, like it was a struggle to get out of bed, or you had just this mild belly pain that was kinda always there, and didn't realize that, no, that's because of what we're eating, what we're putting in our body.
Or on edge all the time, or
Yeah.
like moody all the time. Your sugars are low and you get stressed out, panic attacks. And so I've seen those things. You go, oh my gosh, we can fix that. And Tro actually has a great case study too of a female who was getting hypoglycemic multiple times per day, symptomatic. Puts her on a low carb diet. Well, she has low sugar and you're going to take her sugar weight. Yeah, because when you take away the sugar, you don't get those insulin spikes to make you have low sugar. So we don't see hypoglycemia on a ketogenic diet, right? And even if your sugars are low, you have ketones to run on. So you have another fuel source. It's like a Chevy Bolt. You can run on the battery or you can run on gas,
Yeah.
but if you're putting bad fuel in your car, it's going to break down. No one puts, coconut oil in their car. That's not the right fuel. And so, but you could put coconut oil in your body and run pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so true, and I think there's a lot of new medications, and actually the GLP-1s are over a decade old, some of them now, but we are seeing very positive results from studies with those GLP-1 medications, but that does come at a cost. It comes with a huge financial cost, and there's also significant side effects, and there's actually up to a 50% deprescription rate of GLP-1 medications from many causes, side effects, insurance companies stopping coverage. And so that was one of the other things that we did in our study, is we compared our results to semaglutide 2.4 milligrams, which is Wegovy, is the brand name. And what we found is that we actually had a greater total body weight loss than Wegovy. So that was while stopping 96 medications. So we had a cost savings of about $1,700 per year, compared to if you added Wegovy, that would cost you $13,000 per year.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of things are amazing, especially when there's no support. It's just like sending someone for a gastric bypass surgery. Like when you get to be 500 pounds, That's just not just a genetic problem, right? There's other issues, emotional issues. And, that's one thing with Rob, talking to Dr. Sivas about that is, when after a gastric bypass, the addiction goes through the roof, smoking addiction, alcohol addiction, pornography, you name it, shopping addiction, because they took away your drug of choice. So all of a sudden now you can't eat the cookies because your stomach is tiny. Now what do you turn to? And so extramarital affairs, all these bad things happening. You think, gosh, you're losing weight. You should be like doing great. And it turns into a total disaster for a lot of people because they were never taught nutrition and what to eat. And they go, how do I get that? Like, let me figure out a way to get that soda into my stomach, or how to get to that cookie into my stomach, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the statistics on that is really shocking, and that I think is a huge. And at our local weight bariatric center, they do require everyone to see a psychologist and actually do the Yale food addiction scale to people. So they are very proactive about screening for food addiction, helping people with their food addiction prior to surgery. But I think that is the minority of centers. Otherwise,
By far, yeah, yeah. I mean, all the time I'll say, what did they advise you afterwards? They just said post-op care and made sure my wounds closed up. Like no one followed
yeah,
me long term, or no one made recommendations on protein intake and things like that. So, or they're selling their own supplements there too. I've seen
yeah,
that, and they go, here, just take these supplements, you'll be fine. You don't have to change your diet at all. You can't eat a lot of food, so you're going to lose weight.
yeah, yeah. And I've seen that as well with individuals who maybe they've lost a lot of weight, but they're still eating a very high carb diet and they do not feel well. They have a lot of nutritional deficiencies, which then that can lead to complications. And it's just, yeah, I think that's kind of honestly a bit of malpractice to me to be able to do a bariatric surgery and then say, okay, good luck, without all of that other support system and necessary guidance to prevent those complications.
One, and I think the other thing that we've overlooked too with the huge expansion of the GLP-1 drugs is that a lot of people start saying, I just want to enjoy stuff as much. They've lost weight, but they're just not as happy because you're blocking that dopamine. So you don't get the joy as much joy from the cookie or the donut, but then you also don't get that much joy, going out to the beach with your friends.
Yeah, yep, I've seen that too. I was actually Hippo Education is a really large platform basically for providing CME credits to family medicine physicians, pediatricians, and they just yesterday in their new month this year they're talking about GLP-1s, and that was exactly what one of the things they were talking about is people reporting an anecdote of I'm blunted, my emotions are all blunted.
Yeah, I think you'd rather be happier and skip the cookies and stuff, and just do it on your own. And the other thing, and I think this is something I was going to talk about earlier, but I learned from one of my patients. She came in, it's like it was two best friends came in, and one was like, "You tell me what to do, I'm all in. I'm not gonna deviate." The other one was, she owns some restaurants and wineries and things like that, so finances aren't an issue for her. And so the first time we're there, and she says, "Hey, just so you know." Is it a deal breaker for you if I have sourdough bread every once in a while, or a dessert or something like that? I'm like, no, it's not a deal breaker, but you're here to make yourself metabolically healthier. And you're like, so we're on our first date right now, and you're asking if it's okay to cheat on me down the road, right? I mean, that doesn't seem like it's like, why do you have that mindset? I'm curious. And she said, well, because I've done hard 70, all these things, these hard, she goes, I can do it for 30 or 50 days, but on day 51 or 48, whatever it might be, I just lose it and I eat everything that I couldn't have, that I deprived myself of all this time. So I said, well, that's interesting. You say that, and that may be the mindset if you can make that decision yourself and not me telling you can't do it. I said, I'm all in, whatever I can do to help you do it, if it's once in a while here and there. And so she comes back 3 weeks later, and I'm looking at her continuous glucose monitor. I'm seeing spikes everywhere. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be a nightmare. So she comes in, she's lost weight, she's doing great. I'm like, what are all these sugar spikes? Orange Theory. Whenever she worked out, her sugars went up. And I said, I thought you were going to have like cookies and all these other things. She goes, you know what? I look at him and go, is it worth it or not? Not worth it. It's not helping me on my journey. It's not worth it. So she's making the decision it's not worth it, rather than saying you can't have it, like a kid that you can't have candy and then they go eat all the candy when the parents leave. And so wow, there's a lot to this mental. So for her, if I tell someone you're never gonna have pizza again in your life, like they're like, forget it, I'm not doing this. But if you go, hey, every once in a while, but maybe you could do, I'll give throw a plug because we use Rosette's pizza crust, right? And you can have pizza if that's really important to you. How do we do away with sausage crust pizza or whatever?
Yeah.
So giving people an option where they're not just going to be, eating cardboard the rest of their life, like
Right.
I did for years, eating Melba toast and rice crackers. I'm like, this is brutal, man. When I saw Jason Fung, I was like, if this guy's right, I'm going to be so mad because I was drinking, green juices in the morning, but it tastes terrible if you add some orange juice. So I'm like, oh, you mean that whole time I was spiking my insulin trying to be healthy, right? And so it's
Yeah.
frustrating when you realize all these things they're telling you. They're low in calories, but they're metabolically a disaster. So I see people all the time, they'll say, I'm going to have brown rice or what. Okay, let's see your CGM. And they go crazy. And they're like, oh, gosh, dang it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make those changes, right?
Yeah, the brown rice, white rice reminded me. Dr. Unwin has a awesome sugar graphics, and
Awesome.
you
Yeah.
can type in PHC Unwin sugar graphics. You'll be able to find them. But it compares, brown foods versus white foods from white bread, brown bread, rice, pasta, and there might be a little bit less of a glycemic response, a sugar increase, but they're both going to spike your sugar like crazy, and then there's going to be a crash following that.
Yeah, so we're learning, and those are great. So I have it like when you hand someone, go, okay, what do you eat? Here's the rice. Here's a cup of rice, and they can hold their hand and see how much sugar's in a test tube. It's amazing. Like some of these things that you would not. You look at some of these. I won't say their name out because they'll probably come after me. But these fruit juice smoothie places, and you go, how much sugar's in their acai antioxidant? And you go, oh my gosh, you might as well eat Big Mac fries and a Coke. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, some of the Starbucks beverages, I said it, but they're pumpkin spice latte, depending on the size you get, you're getting 60 plus grams of sugar. The frappuccinos, which you're thinking you're getting a coffee beverage to start your day off, 120 grams of sugar.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this just happened this week, so it's fresh in my mind. But I had a patient, she's killing it. She's been doing great. And then her kids are swimmers, so they were at a swim meet. So Friday, her sugars went crazy. She has a continuous glucose monitor. Friday says coffee, her sugars go crazy. Saturday, coffee, nothing. So Sunday, coffee, nothing. Monday, coffee, nothing. I'm like, what happened? Why did you have what did you do? She goes, I ordered that's the same exact coffee. I went to a local coffee house and they made me the sugar-free whatever. And I knew it wasn't sugar free. So the next day I said, I'm gonna watch you put it in there. Like she got a, mocha or something, right? And she said when they did it with the sugar, it was like nothing. But that first day, if I didn't have my CGM, I never would have known that was happening. So many times people they'll say, okay, I'll have iced tea, and and they go, they're sugar free iced tea, but it wasn't sugar free when they all drank it. So all of them drank it at the same time, and they all and the other thing, the patients who really noticed stuff, and it was amazing, where I had 23 Hispanic females, right, that were eating tortillas all the time, and like, it was a absolute disaster. Like looking at their break room, and I said, I talked to the onior of the company. It was a corporate health type thing. And I go, oh my gosh, your break room is an absolute disaster. They had Mountain Dew, sodas, chips, Funyuns, all this stuff. Like everything was garbage. I'm like, there's no nutritional value. So I called my friends at Health Code. I go, hey, can you guys send some stuff? I know these aren't going to be, they can't afford your product, but if we can help them, so they were making birthday cakes and they were doing all this stuff, and all of them got better. Their sugars, everything got better. So it's amazing because everyone said you can't help those people. But when I taught them education, I had Ben Bakikio talk about exercise. We had someone else talk. Ben Bickman joined me, and having all these people explain to them, and they crushed it. But they knew like the sugars. And the funny thing is, one of my best moments in medicine is we're doing our big Zoom meeting, and they were remote from me, and we did our big Zoom meeting, and it was the end of the day, and they go, look, doctor, and they pointed out she brought cookies and donuts today, and they like pointed her out, and I was like, how do I know you guys didn't eat any? Because the whole tray was full. And I go, how long would that have lasted? Like a month or two ago? And they go, it would be gone in 5 minutes. We would have each taken 5 donuts and ate them all day. And they didn't touch. I was teasing them. I said, how do I know you didn't eat any? They said, look at our CGM tracings. Right? I'm like, oh, you're right. Yeah. So all of them are, but the fact that those addictive foods could be sitting there all day, and they all said, no, it's not worth it. Not one of these 23 had one. They go, there was like 5 missing. I go, okay, who's guilty here? I was teasing them. And they go, none of us had any. It was our other coworkers who took them. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's such a great example. And that's awesome that you were able to help. And again, the remote, it works doing these things virtually and helping people. But if someone is struggling with food addiction, which I'm sure some of the people in that room probably were, even if not all
Oh,
23 were,
absolutely. Yeah,
then
absolutely.
like this, it's just proof there is a path out of food addiction. You don't have to struggle alone with food addiction. You can get help, and it does not have to be a huge, overwhelming process.
And I think if you see it for what it is, I mean, once people see they're feeling better, their sugars are coming down, once you feel that, you go, it's not worth it.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, and this is, this is what I try to help my patients with too. So many times someone say they have a thing for Twinkies, right? Um, they like it's their birthday and they go, you know what? I'm gonna have a Twinkie on my birthday. I don't care. And they go and have it and they go, I felt terrible and it wasn't worth it. And now they've lost this romantic notion of this. They go, it tastes terrible. I didn't realize I used to love those. Now it tastes
Yeah.
terrible. And once you see it for what it is and you go, it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's that's perfect. I just personal anecdote, but I mean, back in undergrad when I was avoiding red meat, I would eat a ton of Taco Bell, and I used to think it was amazing. And when I was pregnant with my son James, a little over 2 years ago at this point, I had a terrible craving for Taco Bell, and I was like, I can't get it out of my brain. I'm going, and I got it, and I felt terrible afterward, and it's like, wow, I can't believe I used to love that, but I used to eat it all the time, and I didn't realize, how it impacted me and how I felt comparatively to how I feel now.
Yeah, it's so weird. Isn't that so weird? That whole I remember when my wife was pregnant for our oldest, she craved like the Wiener Schnitzel. I'm like, you never even eat that. She's never eaten it before that or after that. She's never said, let's go, like ever one time. I was like, how in the heck can you crave something so crazy? But your body's trying to fatten you up for the pregnancy, so you just want to eat like whatever.
Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, so you're all doing great work. What are your big take homes from these stuff? Like, what are things that surprise you, or things that you go, "Wow, this really solidified what I believe," in the studies that you've done so far?
So, in this most recent paper that showed a low carb lifestyle with the right support, the right education, had better weight loss than these extremely powerful medications, the GLP-1 medications, is like you said, uh, it reassures that we are doing the right thing. We can get people off of 96 medications, help them lose a significant amount of weight, have improvement in their quality of life symptoms. And we didn't even discuss, I mean, some of the personal anecdotes that people during the program told me that, I can wear my wedding ring I haven't been able to wear for a decade. I can ride a bike again. I can fit in the high school stadium seats and actually go to the local games that I couldn't go to because I couldn't fit in the seats. I mean, like there's so many real life impact, quality of life improvements that are just so exciting to me. And so I think that you don't, if you want to try to do something without medications, there are really good options. And for our country as a whole, with now over 40% of our country having obesity, if everyone who qualified for one of these GLP medications was put on one of them, it would cost the country over $1 trillion per year. I mean, that is not a way out of this metabolic crisis that we're in. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's when you look at the numbers and they're recommended for young kids now, and and he looked and like, oh my gosh, we have no long-term studies on kids. It's the dangers that the risk and benefit of everything we have to look at. And we're seeing this pandemic of obesity, diabetes, metabolic disease. We're seeing the depression rate going up, suicide rate going up, all these things are going up. And so we have to intervene. And, part of it, like, a big part of it's having community, like we talked about already. And also, like, you can't really, if someone's drunk, you can't talk to them about quitting alcohol. You have to wait for them to be sober to have that conversation. So we're dealing with people who are hopped up on, carbs like crazy. And this is the other interesting thing I've noticed. I haven't really asked this question lately, but so many people, and I wish I could, it would be a great study to start their continuous glucose monitor a week before I see them. Because in that week before they come in for their appointment, they'll go, yeah, I got it all out of my system. I ate a bunch of cookies and donuts and cakes and all this stuff I know you're going to tell me I can't have. So they must have dramatically high sugars. And then once they start changing their lifestyle, but it's hard because if I change your lifestyle today and we change your diet, you're not going to see how crazy it was before, like what you were doing to your body. So I'm like, gosh darn it, I wish we could just do that continuous glucose monitor for a week and just do your normal diet and then we change it, like in in the movie Fat Fiction, they did that with people, and you see the change. You go, oh my gosh, like that solidifies everything in your brain when you see it.
Yeah, I had one of the patients, this was not from this paper, but just is an incredible example, put on the CGM, and the sugars, it was just a yellow straight line across the top, meaning sugars were above
Yeah,
400.
400 the whole time.
Yeah. And so within 1 month, it went from just a straight red yellow block to around maybe the 200-ish area, and then, the 150s, and just it was without medications because the person really did not want to be on medications, so we monitored closely and just did incredible. And, she did not realize what her sugars were doing at the time, living at well over 400 consistently. But once she could see that for herself,
Yeah.
it was like nothing was going in the mouth hardly at all that was going to increase that sugar.
Yeah, and you see the changes so dramatically. And the other, like you're saying, I'm glad you brought that up. The cost, not only to society and family and everyone else, it's the cost of the drugs. These drugs are not cheap. So I remember in my old career saying, begging the insurance company to go, look, these people's sugars are out of control. But we weren't talking. We say, yeah, try eating healthy, but when that doesn't work, here's the drug, and here's the next drug, and here's the next drug. It's not saying let's really focus on that. How do we make it like if you're not taking the medication I'm giving, and that's the other thought. People go, well, they're just not taking their meds right. Well, your med's not working. It's just not working because you're overwhelming the system, right? You have so much sugar everywhere, your body's just overwhelmed, and and then the advice is eat 6 times a day. It's like, seriously, you're gonna tell people with carb addiction to eat 6 times a day? You know how many carbs you're gonna put in your body that you're trying to give insulin to get rid of? Like you said in the hospital, it's insane when you see that and you go, okay, we're going to give you're diabetic and you just got your foot amputated, and they're giving them D5W, which is sugar water in their veins. And then they're giving them a bunch of insulin to get rid of the sugar water. And I'm like, well, why don't you just get rid of the sugar water? And they say, well, they need nutrition. Well, sugar's not nutrition. Like that's
Yeah.
why they're there. That's why they're there. And so it's amazing that people have a blind spot in medicine, the nurses and doctors and the ICU teams. And you look and you go, how can you possibly not see what you're doing to the person? And so I would always say, okay, you know what? Do this. Instead of calling me about this sugar, shut off the IV, change it to D5 half normalcy. I mean, half normalcy without the sugar in it, and call me if the sugars don't. They normalize quickly. It's insane. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing what we do to people.
Yeah, it really is. And I'll just to be entirely transparent, I did start one GLP medication in this study, and the individual was doing really great with keto, but still having invasive food thoughts. And the once we started the GLP, those food thoughts went away. And she said for the first time in her life, she was not dealing with that food noise. And so, I think there can be a time for these medications for sure. But
Absolutely. I think it's using the tool appropriately. And you go, okay,
yeah,
look, we're doing low carb, we're doing keto. You're still struggling. How much of it is emotional? How much is physical? And you say, well, let's see if we can help you out. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
yeah,
Not as the first option without education is the problem. And I hear ads all the time. They go, oh, you just come and take this drug. You don't have to change your lifestyle. You don't have to exercise. And that's the other big problem we had. When Tro and I were first on the scene with low carb, they would say, just change your diet. You don't have to exercise. Like, not true. I mean, one of the biggest thing long term, if you don't exercise, you're not going to maintain, and you're just fighting a losing battle long term. Like losing muscle mass is the worst thing we could do for longevity and metabolic health.
yeah. Yeah, it is a key piece for optimizing health, aging successfully. Gotta stay active.
Yeah, and that's my concern because there's a ton of people who are going to these clinics. They're on the GLP-1 with no lifestyle modification. They lose weight and they feel great. Then when they can't afford the medicine or it gets pulled from the market somehow, you've lost 50% of your muscle mass, your weight. Like that's not a good trade-off. But when you lost your muscle and that's your metabolic rate, right? Your muscle
Yes.
mass. And so you lose that, you go, oh, and that's why starvation diets never work too. Like when you're doing these liquid diets where people are on 500,000 calories a day, they're losing a ton of muscle mass. And I've seen it on looking at body composition. You go, oh my gosh, you have no muscle mass. Where are you going to put the extra sugar? In your
Yeah.
liver? That's the only place you can put it.
Yeah, and this is gonna be in our food addiction paper, where there is a few studies that have looked exactly at that liquid diets, very low calorie diets on food addiction, binge eating symptoms, and there was no improvement in those symptoms. So which is not that surprising to me. Someone's starving, their brain's probably
It makes it even worse. I mean, I had one of my
Yeah.
favorite patients. He's become a good friend of mine, but he came to me. He had lost like 40 pounds doing these liquid diets, and I'm like, "Why are you coming to me? You just lost 40 pounds." And he goes, "Well, I lost 100 pounds 3 times, and I gain it all back. When as soon as I go off it, I lose my mind." He goes, "Right now, I'm fighting with people. I'm a jerk at work." He goes, "I have dreams about food all night." He goes, "I'm miserable. I've lost weight, yes, but I'm miserable." And then we got him on a low carb diet, and we had him on the low carb diet for, I mean, pretty strict keto diet for like 2 months. He lost 3 pounds, but he put on a ton of muscle mass. He got his insulin resistance taken care of. His sugars got better. We take him off meds, and you go, it's not just about the weight; it's about your body composition and muscle mass.
Yeah, and I think some of the time too, you are working to improve the metabolic the metabolic health, the inflammation in the body, the fixing the dysfunctional cortisol system, and that for some people there is this kind of stall or very, very slow weight loss, but you are seeing the improvements and they're feeling the improvements. And then at some point, once the insulin sensitivity is much better, they're again, everything is just you've improved their metabolic health, then the weight starts coming off more quickly.
And joint pains get better, back pain. So
Yeah.
you can go exercise now when you were hurting all the time. No one wants to exercise if your knee and your back and everything hurts, right? If you're carrying 50 extra pounds on your back, it's not that easy to exercise. And so all these things play a role, and getting the mindset. And like you said, when people feel better, they go, I feel like exercise. Not that I have to exercise. Like I feel like doing something. I have energy. Let's go for a hike. Let's go outside. Let's do things. And when people get that freedom back, that is just an amazing thing, like you're saying. And getting that loss of control. Like they go, I have no control. And once they can say, you know what, on Tuesday night, I'm going out with the guys. I'm gonna have beer and pizza or whatever it is. And I'm like, great, you made that decision. That's your decision. Like you realize you won't lose weight this week or these things. But if you can do it one day and get back on track, that's better than saying, I'm not going to have any, I'm not going to have any. Then you go there and blow it and you think you're a jerk, right? You feel like you have no willpower. But sometimes planning and saying, okay, on my birthday, here's what I'm going to do. And then a lot of times people say, on my birthday, I'm going to have cake. And they got there like, I didn't really need it. I looked at them like, I didn't really want it. And when they see that, that's a huge, huge factor, right?
Yeah, it is. And so I think that's empowering, and then also just telling people that it's not about willpower. Moderation is a myth for a ton of people. And so that can be a huge relief to hear, oh, it's not because I just don't have enough willpower. We don't have 50% of the country who all of a sudden doesn't have enough willpower when people used to have enough willpower 30 years ago. Clearly that's not what's happened here.
Well, and that's the big problem we run into standard care is this. They'll say, look, you're overweight. Eat less, exercise more, eat salads for lunch and all that. And these people's insulin's 45, and
Yeah.
insulin prevents you can't get your fat stores. How are you going to burn fat? You're going to be miserable. So like Tro says, like, hey, eat what you want for the first month. Let's not even worry about, as long as it's low carb, let's see. And we'll see the insulin go from 40 to 8. And you go, oh my gosh, now you can fast. Then you tell them, look, physiologically, you can do intermittent fasting. You can eat less now. You don't need, you can get your fat source. You want to do that, or do you want to eat butter? A ton of butter and be burning butter as your fuel source. So there's so much to this, and so what you're doing is so huge for all of us, paving the way and having actual data. We all saw it happening, but if you don't have data, people go, that's great. That's end of one type experiment. When you see, here's a whole workplace getting by, tons of workplaces getting better, and making it happen, it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's I think if we can get more people to, be doing these clinic audits, that would be incredible. And the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners now has a research academy, and that research academy is set up to help doctors, providers of any kind, help people publish their data. And so that's something I definitely encourage people to use as a resource. I am on the research academy, and we're going to be working with our first individual who has a huge amount of clinic data that we're hoping to now work on to get published. But if we could get a lot of people doing that, the amount of doctors who you hear these wonderful anecdotal benefits from is so great. If this could all get published, I think that could really help with this shift that we're already seeing with the emphasis and focus on metabolic health and the power of low carb to help with that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, you're doing great work. So if people want to track you down, they want to track down Toward Health, or they want to like read the studies themselves, you'll send me links. But is there anywhere they can go to find all this info in one spot?
Yeah, we will definitely include links, but you can go to toward.health. So just toward.health online. And I'm on Twitter at Laura Buchanan MD, and coming up on April 26th, which is Saturday, we are having a kind of one-day seminar, Food Relationship Fix, all things food addiction. Very lucky to have Dr. Rob Sivas, Dr. Jen Unwin discussing food addiction, as well as our own Amy Igus, Tia Reed, and Dr. Trokalajian, who are going to be giving some great talks all about food addiction, food relationship, because it is something that so many of us do struggle with, but there is a way out.
That's huge. I mean, these are huge names for anyone who doesn't know these names. They're amazing, doing amazing stuff, tons of publications, and yeah, it's and I'll get this out. This will be out well before that, so we'll get it out, a few days after we record this. So I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do this. And if people want to sign up for that, how do they do it?
We can include a link for you, but it's also will be on the website. If you download the Toward app, there is a link also in the app.
Awesome.
And the Toward
Cool.
Health. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. And then I have to ask you, what's life's best medicine for you? For Dr. Laura, what gets you going? What gets you motivated? Where do you go when things are hard? Those kind of things. What's life's best medicine?
100% for me, it is my family, my relationships. And right now with my son, who's a little over 21 months now, time flies. I tell you,
Wow.
yeah, it really goes by fast. But after a long day of working or research, if I just walk downstairs, give him a big hug, there's nothing that just recharges my battery like that.
Oxytocin is a good thing, right? That bonding and connection and all that.
Yeah.
So awesome, man. Thanks for all you're doing. I'm so proud of Tro, that little knucklehead. He's doing a lot of great work, and he's really matured over the years, and he's still gonna have his edge, because I think Tro and I are very similar in that way. It's like, you tell us we can't do something, like say it can't be done, and go, okay, we'll see. If you say it's non-sustainable or you can't do this, okay, we'll see, and then we'll show you our data and go, here you go, here you go. So that's one thing, because we took a huge risk on low carb MD because no one was talking about this stuff back then. We go, if we can show everyone's doing it with benefit, then it's the standard of care has to change. Now, and the Maha people, all these people are very, very interested in what we're doing because they're seeing the outcomes, right? And they're seeing that, Medicare is not going to last if we don't fix this problem. We had all hands on deck. So what Toward Health is doing, it's amazing. It's just amazing. And then publishing the data and helping people. So everyone listening, there's tons of information here, and I would highly recommend what Tro's doing over there, and going to this conference with great speakers. I'm going to see if Tro will send me a free link and I can go look at it too. I have Toward Health, so maybe I can get on there. And my patients are using Toward Health app too, and it's really beneficial. Like, really just to be able to look things up on your own, and there's a wealth of information there, and so it's a great thing that we can provide that to our patients. But everyone listening, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Listen to this stuff and say, do I have these food addiction qualities? Do I have things where I can't control it? I mean, those are things that are really, really important, because a lot of people aren't going to say anything to you. Your friends aren't going to say anything that you're eating too much until you start eating low carb, you start changing your diet, then they worry about you all of a sudden. But when you're eating the Doritos and nachos and all that stuff, they didn't care. They never said a word. That was normal, drinking your beer and hot dogs and all that stuff. But when you start eating healthy, real food, it's going to make a huge difference. So, there's tons of support out there, and Toward Health, Arizona Metabolic Health, wherever you want to go, just get help and build a community around yourself, and at least get your family involved, get people, that can, if people are eating terrible food in front of you every night, it's going to be hard. You don't drink in front of an alcoholic every night. You say, okay, I won't drink in front of you because you're my friend and I want you to do well, and, take away those temptation things. So,
and I 100% agree with all that. And I have to thank you as well. I mean, the stuff you're doing with the Low Carb MD podcast, when I was coming up in training, I would not be here today without that. So
yeah, it's so great to hear. And that gives us hope when we hear good doctors, young doctors come out. Now I have all my gray hairs and all that stuff. But I wish I met a new patient yesterday with dementia. And she said, gosh, I wish I knew you 20 years ago. Well, like 20 years ago, I couldn't have helped you. I wouldn't have known. I would have just done the standard of what everyone else is doing. But now we have tools at our disposal. We have data, research, and we have hope now. So the worst thing we could possibly do, and this is why I love the end ones, is take away someone's hope, to say you have a chronic progressive disease, nothing we can do. Diabetes, until just recently, because of this metabolic health movement, it's not a chronic progressive disease that's irreversible, right? It's not irreversible. We can at least put it into remission, or you can call it cure. But, I think politically correct will say remission, but as long as you stick with it, just like anything though, if you don't take your blood pressure medicine, your blood pressure goes high. If you're not taking your other weight loss drugs, you gain your weight back. So it's really doing it. This has to be something sustainable the rest of your life that you can do. And it's not going to cost you a ton of money once you're on track. And the good news about these kind of things, the low carb movement, is once you're doing it and you get metabolically healthy, you can get, like, we all hate our neighbors and friends who eat whatever they want. They don't gain weight. They're metabolically healthy and they can get away with it for now. It'll catch up with them, but some of us were dealt a bad card as kids. So now we have to fix that damage. So it's harder and takes more effort and everything. So we're with you on that, but just do what you can to get healthier. Because I'm telling you, and this is one thing that just yesterday morning I woke up and I heard something, and it was something, that expression. This came in my head when I was visiting my dad, and we're getting him into an assisted living because he got declined and got weak over the last year, taking care of my stepmom, who just recently passed away, but had a stroke a year and a half ago. But he's been sitting in his chair in his robe doing nothing and totally declined, mentally, physically, emotionally, everything. So we got him into an assisted living, and it's just unbelievable. He's like going down, meeting people, walking, exercising, down at the gym, eating healthier food, getting more protein. And it's a dramatic change in just 2 weeks. And it's amazing. Like, you look and you go, gosh, how many people are just wasting away because they have what does he have? Community, peer pressure to go exercise, games to play, mental connection, emotional connection, laughing with people. And we see this huge change, and to see that we have hope that things can get better. And so the point is, I saw a lot of people there that were in wheelchairs that are declining, and there's an expression, don't fix it if it's not broke. But we got to fix it before it's broke, because once it's broke, it's hard to fix, right? So if we can intervene now and do something before you get a disaster, because we all know, and this was my frustration with diabetes, was that once you have the ramifications with the peripheral neuropathy and the vascular problems and the cardiac risk, and then you stop eating sugar, it's too late. The damage is done. I mean, it still helps you somewhat that you're not progressing as quickly, but man, it would be nice not to see people. And for me now, I think you're not going to get that. People don't even know we're going to skip the amputations, the blindness, and then having to be dependent, and your family has to take care of you. And like, how do we live our lives in a way where we could have quality of life and lifespan and enjoy it to the last second, and then drop dead someday, hopefully in our sleep, at the end of the game, but not being, flogged and miserable and in the hospital for the last 2 years of our life. It's miserable.
Yeah.
So it's good to have young docs like you who can carry the torch and really contribute and do this research and have the energy, and it's amazing. So thanks so much for joining me. Great stuff. And I hope people share this with their family members and friends and take this to heart, what we're saying, because it's really critically important.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.